The silence doesn't last even a second. Zohran Mamdani leans into the microphone, his voice erupting like a siren breaking through the night. This is not freedom, it's a scam. The audience jolts, gasps ripple through the room, and the tension explodes instantly. Cameras zoom in as his words cut sharp, unrelenting. We are told to believe this is liberty, while families drown in debt, while rent devours paychecks, while workers collapse in jobs that refuse to pay them dignity. And then voices like yours, Joe, tell them to just toughen up, to grind harder, to survive the storm. But surviving is not living. Surviving is not freedom. What kind of liberty is this if millions live one emergency away from disaster? The hall erupts in thunder, half cheering, half booing, the air thick with electricity. Across from him sits Joe Rogan, leaning back in his chair, arms folded, calm but ready, his face a mix of challenge and disbelief. He waits for the noise to fade before his gravelly voice punches back. Zohran, the problem is your entire way of thinking. You talk about people like they're fragile, like they're broken glass that needs to be wrapped up and protected by the state. But life is hard. It's always been hard. That's how humans grow. That's how civilizations push forward. People don't need more government programs. They don't need politicians telling them what's fair. They need to learn to fight, to take responsibility, to work their asses off. Because that's what makes you strong. That's what makes you free. His words spark roars of approval from his supporters in the audience, their claps echoing like war drums. Mamdani doesn't wait. He leans forward, his voice sharper, angrier, cutting through the chaos. Fight with what, Joe? With empty stomachs? With wages that haven't budged in decades? With medical bills that bury families alive? Don't you dare tell me this is just about toughness. No amount of toughness pays the rent when landlords jack up the price. No amount of toughness keeps children fed when their parents work 3 jobs and still fall short. You glorify struggle as if it's noble, but struggle that is manufactured, struggle that is designed by a system rigged for the wealthy, is not noble. It's cruelty. And calling cruelty freedom doesn't make it true. The crowd explodes again, applause crashing into boos, the sound deafening. Joe Rogan leans forward now, his tone sharper, his eyes locked on Mamdani. You keep blaming the system, Zohran, but blaming doesn't fix anything. Look at me, I didn't grow up rich. I fought my way here. I worked every day, built my career from scratch, failed again, and kept moving. That's what America is. It's not some promise that life will be easy. It's the promise that if you fight hard enough, you can climb. And you don't climb by waiting for the government to carry you up the ladder. You climb because you take the damn steps yourself. The audience roars, the clash now volcanic, both sides screaming until the walls themselves seem to shake. Mamdani points straight at Rogan, his words a hammer. And how many never even see the ladder, Joe? How many live their whole lives at the bottom, told to climb while the rungs are broken? Don't call that freedom. Don't call that opportunity. That's abandonment. And if you want to call that toughness, then toughness has become another word for injustice. The stage is on fire. The crowd split in half, the storm only growing louder. The energy inside the studio is no longer just heated. It is volcanic. The sound of the crowd rises and falls like waves in a hurricane, each cheer or jeer smashing against the walls. The moderator's voice is lost, powerless to control the storm. Zohran Mamdani grips the podium with both hands, leaning in, his voice erupting again. Joe, you stand here telling people to take responsibility, to fight harder, to grind their way to survival. But responsibility without access is a cruel joke. A single mother cannot negotiate with a hospital when her child needs surgery. A warehouse worker cannot bargain with a landlord when the rent doubles overnight. A teacher cannot tell a crumbling school to fix itself when the budget has been slashed again and again. You talk about ladders, but ladders are meaningless if they're pulled away the moment people reach for them. That's not freedom, Joe. That's false hope wrapped in slogans. His words ignite the left side of the audience, the sound of applause shaking the hall like an earthquake. Joe Rogan adjusts his chair, leaning forward now, his tone sharper, louder, every word landing like a strike. Zohran, what you're really saying is that people are helpless, that they're children who need to be spoon-fed by politicians. But they're not. They're strong. They're capable. The problem isn't that ladders don't exist. It's that people don't want to climb them if it's too hard. Look, I've seen it over and over. People succeed when they take ownership of their lives. They fail when they wait around for someone else to fix things. You think justice comes from policies, from handouts, from government programs? I think justice comes from grit, from strength, from refusing to quit. That's the difference between us. His supporters roar, chanting his name, their voices a wall of sound. Mamdani doesn't flinch. He fires back instantly, his voice shaking with intensity. And I say your grit is built on the backs of those who had nothing left to give. You celebrate survival stories while ignoring the millions who never make it because the system is rigged against them from the start. You praise the exceptions while condemning the rule. You tell people to climb ladders while billionaires build walls around the top. You call that liberty, Joe? Liberty for who? For the wealthy? For the powerful? For the few? That is not liberty, it is privilege. And privilege defended as freedom is the biggest lie of all. The audience explodes, half of them shouting approval so loudly the cameras shake, the other half booing with fury. Joe slams his hand on the table, his voice rising, gravelly and raw. And I say privilege is crying about the system instead of fighting through it. Privilege is expecting someone else to solve your problems instead of standing up and solving them yourself. You keep saying the game is rigged, but life is rigged. It's hard, it's unfair, it's brutal. That's the reality of existence. You don't change that by whining about injustice. You change it by refusing to let it stop you. You want to build a safety net so wide it becomes a hammock, but hammocks don't build nations. Fighters do. His words spark a wave of cheers so loud they nearly drown out the boos. Mamdani slams back, his eyes burning, his voice thunderous. And I say it is not whining to demand justice. It is not weakness to demand fairness. It is not dependency to demand dignity. Hardship may be part of life, Joe, but cruelty is not. Hunger is not. Poverty is not. Those are choices. Choices made by leaders who put profit over people. Choices made by corporations that exploit workers. Choices made by systems designed to benefit the powerful. If we can send rockets to space, if we can build billion-dollar industries, then do not tell me we cannot feed our children, house our families, and provide care for the sick. That is not utopia, it is the minimum of humanity. The audience roars with thunderous applause, the noise so fierce the moderator stands helplessly, his voice lost to the chaos. Two worlds, two visions, two uncompromising forces, Mamdani and Rogan locked in a collision that shows no sign of slowing. The storm has reached a fever pitch, the cameras shaking slightly from the sheer force of the crowd's noise. This is no longer a debate, it is an earthquake of ideas colliding in real time. Zohran Mamdani raises his voice above the chaos, his words like fire raining down. Joe, you say life is brutal, unfair, rigged by nature. But I say no, much of this brutality is not natural at all. It is designed. Wages kept stagnant while profits explode. Designed. Communities stripped of resources while wealth is hoarded in tax havens. Designed. Housing turned into a commodity for investors while families sleep in shelters. Designed. Don't confuse deliberate cruelty with the laws of nature. A lion hunting its prey is nature. A billionaire hoarding wealth while workers starve is policy. And when leaders defend that as freedom, they are not defending liberty. They are defending a rigged game. The audience erupts, a wall of sound crashing back and forth across the hall. Joe Rogan shakes his head, leans into the microphone, and his gravelly voice cuts through the chaos. Zohran, you talk like every rich person is some cartoon villain sitting in a castle counting coins. But the reality is, people take risks, people innovate, people sacrifice years of their lives to build something great. That's not cruelty, that's vision, that's ambition. You call it rigged because you don't like that some people win bigger than others. But life has always worked that way. Some people push harder, some people take more chances, and yeah, some people rise higher. That doesn't make the system broken. That makes it real. His words land hard, his supporters roaring in approval, the noise filling the hall like a hurricane. Mamdani slams the podium, his voice rising even louder, shaking with righteous anger. And what about those who push their entire lives and never rise? What about the millions who take risks every day just to survive, who sacrifice their health, their time, their very lives for scraps? Are they just weak? Are they just lazy? Or is it easier for you to say that than admit the system is stacked against them? Don't you dare tell a child in a school without textbooks that they failed because they didn't push hard enough. Don't you dare tell a worker who lost their home to medical bills that they lacked ambition. That is not reality, Joe. That is cruelty wrapped in philosophy. The crowd erupts again, deafening, chants of Mamdani's name clashing with chants of Rogan's. Joe raises his hand, his voice booming. You keep using the word cruelty like it explains everything. But what's truly cruel is telling people they're powerless, that the only way forward is for someone else to fix it for them. That is weakness disguised as compassion. The strongest societies, the strongest individuals, are forged in fire. You want to shield people from the fire, but then they never learn how to survive it. They never learn how to thrive. I've had guests on my show who came from nothing, who endured things you can't imagine, and they rose. That's real strength. That's real freedom. And no government handout created it. His supporters rise to their feet, clapping, chanting, drowning out boos from the other side. Mamdani doesn't back down, his voice now shaking with fury, each word a lightning strike. And I say the cruelest lie is calling people powerless because they demand justice. Demanding food is not weakness. Demanding housing is not weakness. Demanding healthcare is not weakness. These are not luxuries, Joe. They are the baseline of humanity. You glorify the exceptions, the rare few who survive the fire, while ignoring the countless lives turned to ash. That is not freedom. It is abandonment. And no amount of inspirational stories will erase the millions left behind. The measure of a society is not how high the few can climb. It is how far the many are allowed to fall. And right now, the many are falling, while you call it strength. The studio shakes with chaos, the clash of cheers and boos like a storm tearing through the walls. Neither man yields, neither flinches, both standing like forces of nature locked in a collision too massive to contain. The hall has transformed into a cauldron, boiling over with raw emotion, the noise no longer human but elemental, like a thunderstorm trapped inside four walls. Zohran Mamdani does not wait for silence. He raises his hand for emphasis and unleashes another tidal wave of words. Joe, you tell stories about those who make it, about the rare ones who rise from poverty into success. But those stories are exceptions, not proof of the system. They are proof of its failure. If only a handful survive, that doesn't mean the fire made them strong. It means it consumed everyone else. Stop worshiping exceptions while ignoring the millions of lives broken along the way. A society that applauds the lucky few while abandoning the many is not strong, it is corrupt. The audience erupts, thunderous applause rolling across the hall like an earthquake. But Joe Rogan leans in, his face serious, his voice gravelly and sharp. And I say you're insulting those survivors by calling them exceptions. They didn't get lucky. They worked, they fought, they refused to quit. That's not failure of a system. That's proof it works. You want to take away the meaning of their struggle by blaming everything on some invisible conspiracy. But their fight means something. It proves anyone can rise. That's the truth, Zohran, whether you like it or not. His supporters roar, pounding their fists on chairs, their chants echoing like drums of war. Mamdani doesn't hesitate, his voice thunderous, cutting through the storm. And what about those who fight just as hard, work just as long, sacrifice just as much, and still sink? What about the worker with 3 jobs who still cannot pay rent? What about the family bankrupted by illnesses despite working every day of their lives? What about the child born into a neighborhood where opportunity has been stripped bare? Are their struggles meaningless because they did not rise? You call them weak. I call them victims of a system designed to profit from their suffering. Do not mistake cruelty for reality, and do not tell me the few who make it excuse the millions who never stood a chance. The crowd roars, a thunderous wall of applause, while boos crash from the other side. Joe slams the table, his words booming. No one is guaranteed a chance. Life is unfair. That's the truth. You don't fix unfairness by pretending you can erase it. You face it, you fight it, and you learn from it. That's what makes people resilient. If you take away the struggle, if you hand people everything, you kill the very fire that makes them strong. That's not justice, it's weakness. And weakness destroys nations. His words slice into the noise, his supporters cheering with wild energy. Mamdani strikes back, his voice raw with fury, his eyes burning. And I say cruelty destroys nations. No country can survive when its people are starved, overworked, and stripped of dignity. Strength is not born from endless suffering. It is born when people are given the foundation to build upon. Food, shelter, care, education. These are not luxuries, Joe. They are the tools of freedom. Without them, freedom is a joke told at the expense of the poor. And I refuse to laugh at that joke. The hall quakes with energy, the chants colliding, the audience split down the middle like two armies at war. The moderator attempts to intervene, but his voice is drowned beneath the storm. Joe points at Mamdani, his tone fiery, unyielding. And I refuse to believe weakness is strength. I refuse to believe dependency is dignity. You want to guarantee outcomes. You want to eliminate the fire of struggle. But struggle is where greatness comes from. Without it, there is nothing but stagnation. Your vision of justice is a slow death of ambition. Mine is a celebration of liberty, raw and untamed. That's the choice, Zohran. Weakness or strength, control or freedom. The audience explodes again, fists pumping, chants raging, the sound deafening. Mamdani's final words in this round strike like thunder. No, Joe. The real choice is cruelty or justice, privilege or dignity. And if liberty must mean abandoning millions, then liberty has lost its soul. The stage vibrates under the weight of the storm. Two men, two visions, neither yielding, neither breaking as the world watches with bated breath. The studio feels as though it can no longer contain the weight of the storm raging inside. The lights glare down like a spotlight on history being written. The cameras zoom tighter, and the crowd is no longer an audience, but a battlefield, split in half, chanting, stomping, screaming with a ferocity that rattles the walls. The moderator's voice is swallowed completely. Nothing can tame what has been unleashed. Zohran Mamdani grips the edge of the podium, his knuckles white, his eyes blazing with fire. He does not wait for silence. He creates it by sheer force of voice, erupting into the hall with words like thunder. Joe, you defend freedom as though it means nothing more than survival in a brutal race. But freedom without justice is no freedom at all. It is privilege. You call hardship noble, but hunger is not noble. You call struggle natural, but homelessness is not natural. You call suffering inevitable, but poverty is not inevitable. It is a choice made by leaders, by corporations, by those who profit while millions endure despair. And when you defend this as liberty, you are not protecting freedom. You are abandoning humanity. True freedom is not the right of the strong to soar alone. True freedom is the guarantee that no one is left behind, that no one is crushed under the weight of preventable suffering. Without justice, liberty is nothing but a hollow slogan. His words ignite one half of the audience into a frenzy, chants of his name shaking the room like rolling thunder. But Joe Rogan leans forward, his jaw set, his voice gravelly and booming, cutting through the chaos with raw conviction. And I say justice without liberty is tyranny. You want to guarantee dignity by decree, but dignity cannot be handed out. It has to be earned. You want to erase hardship, but hardship is where greatness comes from. You want to shield people from struggle, but struggle is life, Zohran. Without it, we are weak. Without it, we are fragile. And fragile societies collapse. You talk about systems and conspiracies, but the truth is simpler. People succeed when they fight, when they own their lives, when they stop waiting for someone else to save them. That is freedom, that is strength, and that is the only path forward. His side of the crowd roars back, fists pumping, chants echoing like war drums. The noise is deafening, two halves of the audience colliding like armies, their cries ball shaking the stage. Mamdani slams his fist down, his voice booming above it all, his final words tearing through the storm like lightning. And I say strength is nothing if it crushes the weak. Liberty is nothing if it abandons the poor. Progress is nothing if it leaves millions behind. Justice is not the enemy of freedom. It is the foundation. And until justice is guaranteed, freedom is a lie. The hall explodes into chaos, cheers and boos colliding, the storm at its absolute peak. Joe Rogan rises from his chair, his voice raw, final, unflinching. And I say freedom must never bow to control. A society that trades liberty for promises of justice loses both. Real freedom is messy, risky, unequal, but it is real. And real freedom will always outlast forced justice. The audience is on its feet, split down the middle, the storm unstoppable. Cameras capture the two men, their eyes locked in defiance, their words still vibrating in the air like aftershocks of an earthquake. The moderator steps in at last, calling the debate to a close, but no one is listening. The noise spills beyond the stage, beyond the hall, beyond the broadcast, into living rooms and streets across the country. And as the lights fade and the screen goes dark, one question lingers, heavy, haunting, unresolved. Will the future belong to liberty without justice or justice without liberty?